Hello, I'm AJ Majike, and today I'm going to be talking about animal speciation. This is the theory behind evolution that one organism that, with various different methods and over a period of time, can evolve into one or more different species, which is hence why the family tree expands as it goes upwards. One can turn into more than one. An example of this is actually on the first slide right here, Tiktaalik rosea. That is a transition form, which is known because it's an animal what is the transition between two major groups, in this case between fish and tetrapods, four-legged animals on land. And it was one of the first, it was actually one of the first vertebrate to come onto land, even though millipedes and centipedes had before. But it's a very important part of speciation, and it's a very good example to show that this happens. But not everyone is familiar with Tiktaalik, and some people may still have questions on just how speciation can occur. Well, there's three different ways speciation can occur, and we will go over them shortly. But before that, to know how an animal speciates, first you have to know what a species is. A species is a group of structurally, genetically, and functionally similar individuals that preferentially interbreed with members of the same specifications to produce viable offspring in a specific period in geologic time. That is a definition I have personally come up with, so you will not find it anywhere, and the definitions for species can vary, but for the most part they're the same. It's an interbreeding community of genetically similar organisms what can produce viable offspring, and they live throughout a certain period of time. Many people don't understand that. Animals do not exist indefinitely. Granted, many of them have existed for a long time, yes, but an animal and a species will exist throughout a period of time before evolving into one or more forms or becoming extinct. And another important note is that every single species or every single individual in the species is genetically different. It's not just for humans. Every single animal is different. No animals have clones have the same DNA, obviously, but whenever animals reproduce through sexual reproduction, which is what I will be discussing today, they have different DNA. And now, since we kind of know what a species is, let's see how they can speciate. The simplest one is allopatric speciation. It's whenever a species forms when it becomes separated, which is like shown here. You have the darker ones who move towards the top, and the lighter breeds stay towards the bottom. And the blue squiggly line right here, I mean, it probably means a river, but it's any geographical barrier what would impede transportation, such as a mountain or a canyon or anything which just can happen through geologic time. Anyway, as these species become separated, that does completely stop the gene flow between those two communities. And over time, they may change so much, depending on how long they're separated, that if they ever come back together, they may not be able to reproduce. That is very, very possible. But in this case, all they did was the lighter ones stayed towards this area, the darker ones towards this. But once they were separated, they couldn't continue to reproduce. So these ones had more alleles, if you can see, for lighter color, and these ones were a little darker. They kept maintaining the alleles and at this point, they're trying to show that they're different species. They're still very similar, but they're completely different species at this point. And there's actually more than one way, as you can say. Geographic means are not the only reason why species can occur. Sympatric speciation is very similar. I actually picked this picture to show you the difference. It evolves in the same location, but there's still reproductive isolation. Now, right here, they overlap. They live in the same environment. They eat the same food. They're pretty close to identical, but they have different genes. Preferential mating is still, sexual selection theories are still being developed. Preferential mating, such as like peacocks and how many dots they have on their feathers to mating success. There's a lot of studies on that, but we're not sure yet. but any non-geographical means what causes speciation in around the same area could be sympatric speciation. So the difference to the right, notice this is one species, and then a river gets carved out and two species form on either side. I mean, I don't think a river would impede tree reproduction because of pollen or because of how it's transferred through wind, but regardless, the point's the same. But on sympatric, notice there's no geographical barrier what occurs. This species just speciates in the middle or inside of the other species realm, which is possible. And genetic means and genetic preferential mating, there's many different factors what can occur to, or what can cause this to occur. But it is very possible, and it happens more often than many people may think. Finally, the last type of speciation is peripatric speciation. This one is the most difficult to understand because it doesn't involve simply the organism, but the environment, and not just a simple barrier in the environment. This will happen whenever whenever a species occupies an environment what has two separate environments in it. The best way to say that is these two areas both have the same temperature, but this soil is uncontaminated and this one would be contaminated. And in natural environments this can happen as well with funguses, bacteria, invasive species, anything. But as long as the two environments have distinct differences, the species may be able to inhabit both of them perfectly fine, but species that live here and species that live here may become reproductively isolated. There are many different reasons why that could happen. Genetic defects can occur from contaminated soils, such as in this case. Any radiation, any impurities or whatnot could affect how a plant grows. And these morphs right here can change mating habits and survivability. So, for an example, perhaps this is the normal grass, but when it grows in mine waste, whatever it's growing up here causes its mating season to be, let's say, a month after. Well, if this breeds a month before and this one a month or later, they will not cross-pollinate. There will be no reproductive or gene flow throughout the two groups of organisms. And as the geographical barrier proved before, any gene flow disruption can cause speciation, which is what happens here. And very likely that this breed will not be able to live here. And eventually this breed might not be able to live here. It may adapt itself so much to whatever new environment it is that it will completely not resemble the first species. So, in conclusion, here are my references, and I just wanted to point out how complex speciation really is, and how time-consuming it truly is. In this example up here, the allopatric speciation, granted these are insects, but for normal species it will take hundreds of thousands of years for a complete new species to develop. Now with insects, it can drastically reduce, but it doesn't eliminate the time need completely. And I want to talk more about this example as my last conclusion. Notice how the species, there's a mountain range in between here, which hence impeded progress. It started out in this little area, or this area, and regardless, whichever way it went, it speciated throughout, specific species for specific means. Now, there may have been multiple different types of speciation on this, but the truth of the matter is, most of these speciation techniques will not work by themselves. And they will all work together, and through natural selection, speciation techniques and natural selection will help an organism attempt to create the most fit individual for the specific environment it lives in for a specific geologic time. And that is how species originate and how they continue to diversify throughout the day and how they have diversified in our past. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.